Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.
He stuck his finger in the end of your what?
Howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and take a sip on a nice cold Sarsaparilla.
Sarsaparilla.
What?
Well, I would write it down, but I don't figure you could read it. Sody pop.
It's Support Your Local Podcast, the show where we take a look at the 1969 Western comedy classic, Support Your Local Sheriff, one chapter at a time. I'm Robert Smith, your host, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. Today we're going to take a look at Chapter 12, Mature Cowardice. But before we do that, I want to take a moment and give you kind of a lay of the land, a look at the goings-on in the world, and not just the time frame that the movie is set in, but also the time frame that the movie is released in a segment that I like to call It Came in 69.
That gun had gone off and it blown right up in the face.
Now, it wouldn't have done my finger a hell of a lot of good either, would it?
In 1869, Leo Tolstoy's novel War and Peace is published in complete book form in Russia. American outlaw Jesse James commits his first confirmed bank robbery in Gallatin, Missouri. Keep an eye on that on the Western Front. And the First Vatican Council opens in Rome. On the women's suffrage movement, the Wyoming Territorial Legislature gives women the right to vote, and this is the first such law in the world. The first American chapter of Kappa Sigma is founded at the University of Virginia. The Paraguayan War, Triple Alliance forces take Asuncion. Ellis Parker Butler, American humorist, was born on December 5th. And on December 31st, just making the year, Henri Matisse, a French painter, was born. Let's skip ahead 100 years, 1969. The heads of state and government of 6 European countries meet in The Hague to establish the methods of putting in place the European integration process on the initiative of the French president, Georges Pompidou. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Half the time when you go through, guys, don't call me out on my mispronunciation. I'm just reading it. Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice offer John Lennon the role to play Jesus Christ in the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar. Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, two members of the Black Panther Party, are murdered by Chicago police in an apartment on the West Side. At the Altamont Speedway in Livermore, California, the Rolling Stones stage a concert and hire the Hells Angels for security. 4 people die, leading to a documentary featuring the events called Give Me Shelter. Over 2 separate locations, the Los Angeles police make surprise attacks on Black Panthers. Party members and children are arrested by some 400 police officers. A shootout involving Roland Freeman leaves him with mass bullet wounds, but he does survive. December 14th, Michael Jackson makes his first show appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show with brothers and sisters as the Jackson 5. On December 17th, NBC's Tonight Show, hosted by Johnny Carson, airs Tiny Tim's marriage to fiancée Miss Vicky with an estimated 50 million TV viewers. Oh, things were a simpler time back then. In Britain, the House of Lords votes to abolish the death penalty in England, Wales, and Scotland, later followed by Northern Ireland on July 25th of 73. The robbery at the Clydesdale Bank, Bridge Street in Linwood, Scotland, leaves 2 police officers dead. And finally, Ferdinand Marcos wins his second term as president of the Philippines by unprecedented landslide vote. This has been It Came in 69.
Wow!
And we're back. We start our chapter, Mature Cowardice, by having some sweeping music and a shot of an absolutely beautiful countryside. A wagon is being pulled along the trail with Prudy and the sheriff inside. Prudy's driving, so this continues the trend of the sheriff not being the type for manual labor, but also kind of goes against type for not just Westerns, but that masculine ego persona, a stereotype as well. So being against such manual labor, also this is another consideration when you are looking at my Latigo Smith theory, that this is just Latigo Smith, who obviously did not enjoy any type of manual labor. As I previously mentioned, the shot of the countryside is truly beautiful. Such a shot would not have been possible without a professional like the Why do I always struggle with cinematographer? Cinematographer. There, I said it, and I'm leaving all this in. Of this movie, Harry Stradlin Jr. So let's take a moment to take a better look in a segment where we take a look at some of the movers and shakers of the movie in a segment that I call Remember the Name.
That's about all I'm going to do the rest of my life is go around remembering your name.
And welcome back to Remember the Name, the segment of the episode where we take a bit of a deeper dive into one of the cast of characters or the creators of the movie. Today we're going to take a look at Harry Stradlin Jr., the cinematographer for this movie. There's obviously several shots in this movie that are just absolutely gorgeous. The wagon ride between Prudy and the sheriff is the one that immediately comes to mind. But anybody looking at this movie, this is a very well shot movie. Nobody can doubt that. This is a very well shot movie. Mr. Stradlin was born in 1925. He left us in 2017. He has a very extensive career, predominantly in Westerns. He's predominantly known for his Westerns work. He's done 6 films with the director of this movie, Burt Kennedy. He's one of his cast of characters when it comes to creating movies. He, before Support Your Local Sheriff, had done 86 episodes of the popular TV show Gunsmoke. He had done 21 of all 23 episodes of the TV show Cimarron Strip. He was very familiar with the Iverson Movie Ranch that this movie is shot at. He did several movies at this location, so he kind of had a chance to really take a look at all the different angles, different aspects, and really knew how to shot this area well. So prior to shooting Support Your Local Sheriff, he had done Welcome to Hard Times. He had done with 6, You Get Egg Roll, Young Billy Young, and then into Support Your Local Sheriff. He returns for Support Your Local Gunfighter. So he is one of the kind of core group that has done both of them, along with the director, the writer, a majority of the cast, of course, Mr. Garner. Afterwards is where he really found some acclaim. So in 1972, just the year after shooting the sequel to this movie, he gets an Academy Award nomination for cinematography for the movie 1776. He unfortunately loses. The very next year, 1973, he gets nominated once again for The Way We Were. 1975, he gets to work with Mr. John Wayne in Rooster Cogburn. And then probably his most famous movie to date, and is actually his last credit on his IMDb. What a way to end your career after Academy Award nominations, getting to work on such iconic movies and TV shows like Gunsmoke, Rooster Cogburn, Support Your Local Sheriff, and or Gunfighter. Of course, he was the cinematographer for Caddyshack 2. Easily the best sequel to any movie ever made. Keep your Godfather 2s, keep your Aliens, keep your Rockies. Caddyshack 2. Wow, I was actually a little bit sad when I was going through his IMDb and saw all this great stuff that he had done. And the very last line of it is he's the cinematographer for Caddyshack 2. Not exactly how I would like to go out in my career, but a very well decorated, very well respected cinematographer, and Mr. Harry Stradley. His father was also a cinematographer, so he gets it honest. But that was our brief look at the life and career of Mr. Harry Stradlin Jr., cinematographer for this movie. And this has been Remember the Name.
You tell him I remember his name.
And we're back. So Prudy and the sheriff ride up to a grove of trees, and we see the beginning of a body of water just off to the side of the screen. And I looked, and I'm pretty sure that the tree they park by and that water is the same as the tree and the pond that Jason and Jake were fishing and napping at earlier in our previous chapters. So interesting if this is just a easier way for the movie makers to shoot. So they had limited locations, so they just decided to shoot it. Because if you look at this one, they are shooting from screen right towards, or I don't know if that's the correct term, but from the right of the tree they're shooting, as opposed to earlier when they were shooting from basically the lake side. So maybe they're just trying to multi-use a set of scenery, or if Jason had told Prudy about this spot and just allowed her to drive. As they get out of the wagon and stretch their legs, Prudy warns the sheriff that the Danbys are getting their family and their hired hands together for a showdown. From her calculations, there are roughly 11 Danbys, plus any hired hands that they may bring. And this is interesting as, spoiler alert, there are only 13 people that show up for that fight. So if you didn't know by now, there's going to be that fight. So apparently each older Danby only brought one hired hand, which I found a little bit interesting. It's also interesting to have Prudy being the one to do this exposition dump of the danger the sheriff is facing. If word is getting around town, or as in earlier, that just means throughout the saloon anyways, if word is getting around town, first of all, how? Paul does not strike me as the type to socialize much, and the two brothers have supposedly been riding for days out to their uncle's ranches. So who is it that is spreading the word about the Danbys pulling their powers together? Did Joe tell them? That, and if it is going around town, how is that not a conversation right then and now when you hear it? Prudy waited until her ride/date with the sheriff to talk to him about it? Question mark. I know that maybe the bad news would have caused the sheriff to not go on the date and skip town, which is the trope she's hoping for. So maybe that was her fear, and at least I can get a bit of a date out of this. Maybe Prudy is trying to make this into a goodbye date, and now that puberty has hit her so hard, maybe a goodbye romp with the sheriff before he disappears. I don't know. But when he's asked what he's going to do, the sheriff says he's going to skip town, which is clearly against the stereotype. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Just saying. The sheriff is playing Prudy for a reaction. You can tell he's looking dead at her as he says it and kind of side-eyeing her. But when she doesn't give one, he's noticeably not prepared for it. In fact, she even says that she finds it mature to decide that way. The sheriff is visibly taken back by this. So now that he has to change his tune, because that's not how nagging works, obviously, he decides that her not thinking it's cowardly is wrong, and that he does think it's wrong. And is this, I have to ask, the old school origination of nagging someone? I mean, he's obviously into her, but he's doing whatever he can to argue with her in almost every conversation that we've seen and trying to push her buttons. So he continues to argue with her about thinking he's a coward and that he'll show her that he's no coward. So I guess when the going gets tough, the tough get staying? Question mark? We end our scene with Prudy. Yes, unfortunately, we have to end soon. This is a shorter chapter, but we end our scene with Prudy reliving the conversation that just happened in her head and leaving herself completely confused at what just happened. You have to kind of feel bad for Prudy. By her own admission, she is just a dumb little old girl. It's the name of a chapter. It's a thing she says. Don't at me. I'm literally quoting the movie. Is it that Jason does not want her to have the romantic notions and stereotypes? Is that what he's trying to break down? First the porch swing and now a romantic ride in the countryside. I really don't know. But definitely stay tuned to find out if the nagging worked back then as it does in today's day and age. But yeah, definitely stay tuned, see what happens when we return next week for Chapter 13, A Civic Duty. Until then, definitely check us out on social media. We are at Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Support Your Local Podcast. If you're looking to find this podcast, if you just happen to stumble upon us, definitely check out our back catalog. See what the rest of the movie that you've missed has sounded like at supportyourlocalpodcast.com or wherever your favorite podcatcher may be. If you would like to check out the movie, it is currently free on YouTube. It is free on Freevee, whatever the IMDb alternative is, or not alternative, what it became. So definitely check out the movie. Until then, for Robert's recommendations for the day, I want to give a shout out to one of the bad movies podcasts that I listen to. I listened to quite a few of them, but probably my favorite and the one that got me started was We Hate Movies. Definitely check them out. They have a huge back catalog and new stuff coming out every week. But if you enjoy bad movies like I do, if you enjoy talking about bad movies like I do, if you like fake Arnold impersonations but really good Jesse Ventura ones, definitely check out We Hate Movies. Shout out to them at wehatemovies.com. But until then, folks, I do want to thank you for your time. And as always, support your local podcast.
He stuck his finger in the end of your what?
Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.